episode of Speed Wobble Ride Beyond Basics. Today we have Bobby Loo from Motorrev Suspension and Tuning Service here with us. Today, we're going to talk about Bobby's recent Bitubo certification. We want to talk about the mysteries behind suspension setups, and I also want to dig in a little bit about him getting out there at Chokwalla on CVMA. So, Bobby, how you doing?
I'm great. How are you?
I'm doing pretty good. So, how did you start Motorrev Suspension Tuning?
Damn, that was a long time ago. So essentially, Motorrev as a name, it started with just like an Instagram page when I was way younger. I was probably in my early 20s, and I'm a big fan of Top Gear, so I wanted to be like Jeremy Clarkson, James May, and all them. So I wanted to try to figure out how to be like an automotive motorcycle journalist, but I'm not very good at writing. Oh. So that didn't go very far, and I just kind of left it and didn't touch it for a while. Then years later, when I actually started getting into motorcycles again, because I got out of motorcycles, got into cars, got into motorcycles again, and I started racing electric motorcycles, and it kind of made sense. I'm like, all right, motor and then rev. So I started using that for the electric bike stuff, and then that turned into suspension, and the name stuck, and everybody knew me as Motorrev, so I just stuck with it.
That's interesting. I didn't know that you started out in electric motorcycles. I would have never pegged you for...
Well, I mean, I rode on the streets forever on gas bikes, 600s. That's where I started. But then when I kind of gave up on the street bike stuff and got into cars and then eventually got into motorcycles again, that's kind of the avenue I went to, was electric motorcycles.
So where we met you was at the track.
Big Willow.
Yeah. So how did your suspension tuning service evolve into trackside services there with basically every organization that we've ridden with? You have been there providing services.
I mean, it took a lot of blood, sweat, and tears to get to that point, and it's still
quality work. Right?
Yeah, I mean, I take pride in what I do, and I pretty much since I've started, suspension's been something I've dreamt, ate, drank, everything was just suspension related, and I just couldn't get enough of it. I was really, really just passionate about it. So that's awesome. And that passion still hasn't gone away.
Because I know we've taken some of our other bikes they went to different suspension tuners, and the setup just wasn't fitting for us at all. And then we brought the bikes to you, and all of a sudden, I'm not fighting the bike anymore. I'm actually riding the bike. It takes a lot less effort. It turns when you want it to turn and all that. But so back to trackside services. What do you do at the track for a trackside suspension service?
Well, first and foremost, we start off doing just setups. So people come to me in the morning. We get a baseline setup. Get the bike set the sag in the rear if it doesn't have a top out spring. Then from there we mess with the clickers and preload and get the bike dialed, and I send them out to the track, and they come back with complaints if they have any complaints or any feedback. But that's pretty much what I do throughout the day. I also do like emergency fork and shock services. Yeah. That can happen early morning, or it can happen midday, or if it's like a double header, I can do fork and shock services at night before I go to bed. So that works out pretty cool.
I remember before we became friends, we had that clapped out R3 with a leaky front fork.
Right.
And it passed tech inspection, but you saw it leaking a little bit of oil.
I had to pull
you went over there and pulled the sticker. I was like, is this dude just trying to get an emergency fork service? Because you're like, hey, I can fix it right now for, No,
it wasn't just leaking. It was gushing.
No, you absolutely did the right thing by pulling this sticker, and we shouldn't have even tried to put that bike on the track in that condition. But anyway, so everyone brings their bike to you at the track. What's like the biggest misconception that they're bringing with them about how they've done their setup that you have to correct?
Now you're getting into this area where it's going to be kind of difficult to explain because I don't want to sound like I'm talking bad about other suspension tuners. We all have our own tricks of the trade. We have our own ways of doing things. There's very many ways to set up a bike. There's very many ways to bake a pie, to make a pizza. Everybody does it differently, but seems to be that the way I do things really works for the majority of riders. And there's a lot of common misconceptions out there, like with set and sag. I'm a true believer that it's really difficult to set sag with anything that has an internal top-out spring. And shocks have them, not all of them, but a lot of them do, especially some of the race stuff. And most forks have them. So when you're thinking about set and sag in the front, I mean, I know everybody's seen online set and sag on a bike. They have to be these numbers, but what people don't realize, especially in the front, you have your main spring and you have your top out spring, and you have two opposing forces fighting each other. And as you can't fully extend the suspension to get a zero. And then when you put the bike on the ground, you have the top out spring fighting the main spring and the main spring fighting the top out spring. So they're always doing this.
In a floating balance.
So the number doesn't really ever change. And it can, depending on how stiff and how short or how long the top out spring is. But at that point, there's so many different variables that I just don't set sag in the front especially. I found a number that works for the rear if it has a top out spring. So there's that common misconception. Another common misconception that makes, I guess, my setup work so much better, and you've felt it, is pushing on bikes. I mean, everybody's like, can you please push on my bike? Can you set the clickers? There's a certain feel that I'm looking for, and mostly I'm feeling for initial bleed. That's just oil going through an orifice. I'm not even thinking about or feeling the actual shim stack itself. I'm feeling just the initial bleed. And people think that you can really push on a fork or a shock and feel every ounce of valving in there. I'm not strong enough. I don't know anyone that's strong enough to really generate enough force to do that. So what happens is people tend to close everything off because it feels too fast, or on the other hand, like a Penske, where that feels too slow if you push on it, so they end up opening it. And honestly, like, just that makes my job a lot easier, just fixing little things like that. And that gives you the most confidence, because when you actually ride the bike that I've set up, because I know where everything should be and I can kind of feel the bleed, and it's so much better. You get way more feel.
You're so familiar with all the different common bikes that people have at the tracks.
Yeah.
Right. And then rider weight and what the valving that's in the suspension and all that stuff. So you know where to establish the baseline based on all of that?
Yeah, because I'm not the type of guy that's just like Öhlins
This is
or
what
nothing.
the book says. This is
Exactly.
what we're going with.
I've pretty much dove into pretty much every manufacturer out there, and I've understood the engineering behind it by taking everything apart, dissecting it, and kind of understanding every brand and understanding where their starting points are. And typically, their starting points work.
Yeah.
And usually, if you don't deviate from their starting settings, then you're in good shape.
You can ride comfortably until you get up into like a performance and a track and a race.
Yeah, but then some people start to push on their bikes, and especially race suspension, like Öhlins, it always feels fast, especially on the rear shock, like on a TTX, it always feels fast. So then people start closing it. Oh, it's still fast, close it, and they get to the point where it's 6 clicks out, and it feels like it's better. Okay, go out and try it. And then you go out and try it, and then it squats and just stays there, and then it puts all that load on the tire, doesn't want to steer. So, yeah, I mean, just from experience, I know where everything should be, and I kind of have a feel for bleed. And then set the geometry, set the preload, front and rear sag, if you want to call it that. And then just send you out on the track. And then from there, we just talk about the setup, talk about how it feels. Because when it comes to teaching the customer what they should be looking for, that's the hardest part, because what I'm looking for in a bike, it's really hard to explain what I'm feeling.
Yeah.
And like I've told you, like I rode your bike and I'm like, I couldn't even,
You're fighting it though.
After one lap, I'm like, I don't know how you ride this bike. So after a few tweaks, what I was looking for is that feeling of it just falling into corners,
Flowing, yeah.
flowing. I want it to feel like I can look where I'm going and it just goes.
Yeah.
So I want it to fall into corners. I want it to be stable mid-corner. I don't want it to be too soft where it just bottoms. I don't want it to be too stiff where I have to really jab on the brakes to get it to load. Like, I just want it to be effortless as possible.
Yeah. So that's your ultimate goal when you're tuning a suspension setup for somebody, is to get that flow for the bike to respond to them without a lot of struggle. You're not tuning the suspension trying to be like, oh, this is gonna knock a second off your lap time or any other goal. You're just trying to allow the rider to ride the bike comfortably. And under
as
control,
easily as possible.
right?
Yeah.
Because that's what you do with my bike. You know, I've been riding for how long on the suspension setup that I had, and then you took it out. You're like, I don't even know how you ride this thing. You tuned it, and then it just did exactly what I wanted it to do. It was doing what I wanted to do before, but it took a lot more effort, and it was really tiring session after session. So when you're out there really trying to push it, but as soon as you did my suspension, I knocked 7 seconds off my lap time.
That's what happens when you get comfortable.
Right, and now I'm out there. Same setup still. I don't really modify it because I'm comfortable where it's at. Even on a variation of tracks from Truckwalla to streets, I'm still riding the same setup, and I'm consistently getting faster lap times because the bike responds to me how I want it to. So we want to talk about a couple things because this whole podcast is to educate new riders and teaching them about suspension, right? We want to ride beyond basics. We're going beyond getting on a motorcycle and commuting or going on short rides with friends. We want to teach them how to be better riders, but not only better riders, but in the same turn, safer riders. So let's get a little explanation for the viewer. So what does it feel like when the front is too soft? Can you give an explanation of how that feels for somebody that doesn't know what's right and what's wrong on a setup? Kind of like how I was with mine.
Yeah.
I was just riding it. I thought that's how a V4 was because there's so much power, a point and shoot. That's how I was riding. So when the front's too soft, what does that feel like?
Well, when it's too soft, it's going to feel like it's constantly just diving.
Just dipping?
Just mainly on the brakes, it just dives.
On the brakes. Yeah.
And then when you try to enter a corner, then you're having to really muscle the bars to get it to be controlled in the corner. And then to find the apex, and then mid-corner you're having to fight the bars, and it's kind of feeling loose. That's when you know the front end is really soft.
A little bit.
Yeah.
So how does the opposite feel when the front end's too stiff?
Oh, I've had bikes where that were completely like overly stiff, where you go into a corner and you can't even find the apex because it's so stiff you can't even load it, and then you have to really jab on the brakes to get it to pitch forward to find the apex, and at that point you've overslowed. So, and then also you'll start feeling a lot of the imperfections if it's way too stiff.
That's how my bike was. And I was like, I like that. I liked the tactile feedback, but I thought that was the geometry of the bike, how it was supposed to be. I was like, I can feel every bit of traction, but really it was just my suspension setup was just way too stiff for how I was riding.
Yeah, well, like you have that's a stock Showa big piston forks, and those by pushing on them, they always feel too fast, and then people end up closing them. And when you go out on the track, and a lot of people just don't know, but I've noticed that just by opening it up little by little, it just starts to get better and better and better. That's why pushing on bikes really doesn't do it justice.
So let's move to the next piece, and suspension is rebound. Mm-hmm. Same thing. How do they know when there's too much rebound in the front?
So for me, the first thing I do is, like, if I'm in the paddock, I'm riding, hit the brake and kind of release the brake. Does it pop up too fast, or does it feel like when you release the brake, it just kind of crawls up like really too slow? It's also a personal preference. I'm the type of rider that likes a little bit of a freer rebound, because I typically like to brake hard and just use my finger to control the rebound. Yeah. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Because I like a freer rebound, because a freer rebound to me gives you bump absorption. Everybody thinks that compression is the harshness that you're feeling from the front, where a lot of the times your harshness is coming from the rebound being too slow, and it's just packing up over bumps. It's not actually absorbing. It's hitting a bump, going over the bump, and not extending quick enough for the tire to stay on the ground. Yeah. And also, you don't want it to be too fast where it's just like this all the time.
If you don't have that higher level of brake control, trail braking in, if you off the brake too much and it rebounds up, you're going to
go that way
unload the
instead of
front
this way.
tire. Yeah. And you're going to end up in a bad situation. So let's move to the back. So the rear suspension. So what is it like when the rear is too soft?
When the rear is too soft, like on my KTM, I've been chasing, figuring out the proper spring rate. I've gone through like probably 3 spring rates already. And it's mainly because the bike was so slow, and I've actually little by little started fixing it. Now it's got more power, and then with more power, it squats a little more. But it'll start to feel like when you get on the gas, it just kind of squats and starts doing this. It's just dancing around.
Floating around in the back
If
end.
the rebound's too fast, you get on the brake, and it just pops up and starts to want to wiggle on you. But that can also happen if the rebound's too slow. If you get on the brakes and the back end's too slow on the rebound, it's too slow to recover, that back tire will come off the ground and it'll start to move like this.
Okay.
So you just got to find that sweet spot.
So for a new rider, how do they tell the difference if the issue is their suspension, or if they're dealing with tire pressure problems, or if it's just their technique that they haven't refined? How are they gonna? Where do they start to figure out what the actual problem is?
Well,
Because I was riding in a group with this one guy, and he was constantly just taking his bike to suspension shop, to suspension shop, to suspension shop, and always complaining about his suspension. And it's just, I think at that point it was his technique that was causing the problem. He didn't have it refined. He's a canyon rider that rides really fast, that doesn't use a lot of body positioning, so he's leaning the bike a ton, and I just don't think it was a very refined style of riding. So how does a person know like where to look to be the problem?
Well, there are definitely guys and girls that like to blame everything on the suspension. I can't ride fast if something's not right. Since I've been riding so many bikes lately, I've gotten used to riding things that were terrible, and I've learned to ride around them, which is a good thing. But at the same time, it's not. You want to pinpoint, you want to figure out what the issue is and solve it. But I tend to give the riders the benefit of the doubt and say that, okay, your riding is probably decent. Let's figure out if it's the suspension. And then if we've exhausted all sorts of, things with the suspension, then I'll go and watch them and be like, okay, you're not getting off the bike at all. Like, I need you to hang off the bike as much as you can, because what happens is if you're trying to lean that bike over, you're trying to get your knee down and you can't even get your cheek off the seat, you're going to be loading that front tire, and that front tire is just going to
end up tucking.
You're going to end up tucking the front. You're going to end up loading that front too much. You're going to be carrying all this lean angle, and the suspension's taking it all, because when you start hanging off the bike, it starts unloading the suspension.
Change your center of gravity.
Exactly.
Less lean angle means more traction.
Yeah, but anyway, I mean, yeah, it could be the rider, it could be the suspension. I give the rider the benefit of the doubt, but I also try not to blame the suspension for everything.
Yeah.
And most of the time, my customers, when I get them dialed in the first time, especially C, B, even A group riders, they'll go out and they'll come back in for tire pressures and stuff like that, and that's pretty much it. I mean, and when it comes to tire pressures, I pretty much set them to kind of a baseline of what I like and what pretty close to what manufacturers recommend, and then we just leave it there. We just keep checking. I'm not the type of guy that will manipulate the tire pressures because the tire looks a certain way.
Yeah.
If the tire looks a certain way,
which we see a lot of on Instagram. Right.
When the tires look a certain way, it's probably 1, your pace is too slow, or 2, it's a compound issue, or 3, it could be that the setup is just completely wrong. You're overloading the tires somehow. It's all about equal load on the tire. Just the correct amount of load on the tire. That's why if you've seen pictures of my tires, I've gotten to the point where my bikes are just, they feel flawless. I still have a few issues that I'm going through and that I'm trying, because I'm always chasing just a little bit more of making the bike just a little bit easier to flop left and right. But my tires always look just
because you're the suspension guy. You're looking for that.
That's just my job. It's what I think about on a daily basis.
On my V4, my tires sandy beach all the way across, nice even wearing all the time. Now before you could see where I was hard throttling out of a corner and all that stuff, and now it's just
because the bike's letting you ride in a manner that is smooth. You can get on the gas smooth from the edge of the tire to the center of the tire and to the other side of the tire. You're not just on the edge, standing up and then mashing on the throttle, or so if you're not riding too slow on slicks, when you're riding too slow on slicks, you can't generate enough heat. Yeah, so you get all this buildup everywhere on the tire, and they're like, what's wrong with my tire? Why does it look like that? You're just not going fast enough. And a lot of people will actually take a ton of air out so that it keeps heating the tire, and that's just not the right way to do it.
Not the right way to go about it.
Yeah.
So for a new rider, right, they want to work on their suspension a little bit themselves, experiment a little bit. What do you think the baseline for them and still be within like a safe region they could go out and generally do to their own bike, like change 2 clicks, test 1 corner, a braking zone, write it down, come back, make a change again, and then look for that flowiness?
Well, I think first and foremost, if they've never touched suspension, just go to a professional. Just have a professional give you a baseline. Mm-hmm. Have them write down the settings of where you're at and kind of teach you how to read and set your clickers. And then go from there. And then don't be afraid to go back and forth, but I wouldn't go full closed or full open. I've seen people tell their riders or go like, all right, let's go full closed. Go try it.
Yeah.
What the fuck?
No,
I'm not ever going to close the circuit, especially on a race cartridge, and have you go try it. No, that's a recipe for disaster.
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to deviate from those base settings. Go a couple clicks this way, a couple clicks that way. But people need to realize it's more than just clicker settings. My bikes, when I find a good clicker setting, they usually don't move. They usually stay in that within a click or two from there. Depending, like if I go to Button Willow where it's really bumpy, okay, then I'll open it up a little bit more. But if it's like a smooth track like Streets of Willow, the circuit, Chuckwalla, my clicker settings actually don't change, and it's more of just a plus and minus on the preload to get the feel that I'm looking for, and that's it.
Nice.
So yeah, I would first, if you've got your base settings pretty good, just focus on preload front rear to get that thing to fall into corners, to give you that feeling that you're looking for. And teaching feel is very difficult. It was a really difficult thing for me to learn until I actually felt it, and then I'm like, oh, yeah, all right. But how do I explain it? Go ride my bike. I'm not gonna let everybody do that.
Right. That's what you did on my V4, right? I was still pretty quick, right? And then you got in there and did your thing on it, and then I was like, wow, like this is what it's supposed to feel like, and immediately knocked a ton of time off, and I'm still progressing on that same setup.
Yeah, and as you go faster, you might have to make more changes.
Yeah.
Or you might actually have to cough up some money and get some good suspension.
I'm working on it. So obviously you're very knowledgeable in suspension, but you just recently went to a Bitubo factory suspension training in New Jersey, right?
Yeah.
For what, a week?
A week. It was fun.
What did you go over there like?
Well, they were offering the training because I was planning on doing the training, but in Italy, so I'd have to buy my ticket to go to Italy. So I've got 2 kids. I can't take off too much time.
Yeah.
So I'd have to go it was a 3-day training. I was planning on doing it in 5 days. What am I going to do in Italy for 5 days? Most of the time I'll be training and I'll be tired. It's not even worth it. No, it's not worth going. Yeah. So when they announced that they were doing the training here, I'm like, sold. But I just did the training because I know Bitubo. I'm one of the few in California. I don't know about the rest of the West Coast, but there aren't very many of us on the West Coast that actually have the tools for Bitubo. Bitubo,
specialty tools.
They need tons of specialty tools. I pretty much got gifted those tools. I got them from Bellissimoto. They sold to me for super cheap. But I got pretty much $5,000 worth of specialty tools for next to nothing. But I went, not that I really needed it, because I know the product, because I've been using the product, because my bike has Bitubo. Just did it because I wanted that certification. I wanted to see if I can learn something else.
Advance your craft, yeah.
Yeah, I'm not the type of guy that thinks I know everything. Like, I'm willing to learn. And, you know, my mentor came out to CVMA the past 2 rounds, and I'm still learning from him. And, you know, we butt heads a little, not in a good way. We kind of butt heads a little bit, and we kind of fight about setup and what direction we want to go. But he's got some good points, and then I'll listen to him. I'm like, all right, let's do it. Let's go.
Nice.
Yeah.
So at the Bitubo training, like, what surprised you the most? Was it the content they had, the standards that they set for the training, the testing that they were doing, or like your own expectations of what you were going to leave there with?
I don't want to say I didn't really learn a whole lot. If anything, it was like me and one other guy were the most knowledgeable there. The other guy, Emerson, I think, he's from Bobblehead Moto, a buddy of mine. We were the most knowledgeable there. And I feel like a lot of the issues I was having and a lot of the fixes I was having, I confirmed it with the instructor. I said, I was having this issue with my Bitubo. I did this, I did that. And he agreed with everything that I was doing.
Oh, nice.
So that was great. That was nice. And it was nice to see their database and all that stuff. But in terms of like servicing and stuff, like I've had like the service manuals for a long time, so it wasn't anything new. It was just a nice experience to be with a factory Bitubo, the guy who actually developed the suspension system, and actually have some conversations with him. That was really cool.
That must have been like reaffirming too, when you bring the things that you've run into with their shocks and stuff to them, and they're like, yeah, we know. And you know, your solution, that's how we solve it too. And you came to that stuff on your own to find out that you did the same thing that the factory mechanics and stuff are doing. That was pretty awesome.
It felt really nice. Yeah, it was really cool.
So did anything that you learned there change how you're tuning a Bitubo setup?
Not really,
because you're already still like, you've already figured it out.
I spent a couple years on that Bitubo, and I mean, just from my own testing, I mean, I already kind of learned what I needed to learn, and obviously, there's still more to learn, and there's some issues that I'm still having with the bike. Just one issue: it's stable, it turns when I'm on the brake. It's stable mid corner. It exits the corner. It feels good. It's compliant. But when I'm on the gas, like coming out of like button wheel, coming out of the sweeper and going into the S's, it costs a lot. It's a lot of work to get it to go side to side when you're hard on the gas. When the forks are fully extended, maybe not fully extended, but extended, it's hard. So I talked to the instructor. I'm like, hey, so this is what the issue is. It feels great everywhere else, and I ran the numbers with him, showed him everything, and he agreed with everything that I was doing. And I'm like, all right, so it's stable mid corner, it goes into a corner, it's compliant to everything, it does everything I want, it steers with my eyes, and it feels great, and everybody that's ridden my bike loves it. But it's just a little hard to turn in these sections. What can I do? My thoughts were, can I take the top out spring, which is about that long, do you guys offer a longer one? And he's like, actually, we do. I'm like, okay, do you guys have a longer one and a softer one? We do. So we started looking. He looked up on the database, and this, he's like, this is what we have. I'm like, all right, because my thoughts were, can we go longer? That way, softer. When you get on the gas, that top out spring's longer. It keeps you deeper in the stroke, just a little bit longer. And so I find he gave me a part number that I need, so I got to go order it. I haven't done it yet because I haven't ridden that bike in a while, but it was just fun, just nerding out with the guy.
That's awesome. Find like-minded people like that. So you've been at Jaguala a lot recently. We saw you on TV. You're on YouTube on 951 Live.
Yeah. That was funny.
racing was it the lightweight?
The old the
Ultra
old,
lightweight 400?
Yeah, it was the ultra
300?
lightweight. No. I was in 350 Super Sport, but it was just, it's not that it was easy. I mean, when I had no power, I was still almost winning, and the bike was just bucking around. Now that I have my power, I'm like, there's only three people on my grid. I'm like, I'm just gonna bump up to 500 because I'd be fairly decent, so I'm okay with 350. So I ended up racing the shootout, which is an 8-lap race, not a 6-lap race, and I just wanted to test myself, and I think I did pretty well. I mean,
were you the smallest bike there, or was there an
yes.
R3?
No.
You were, right? And then next up was
bike.
I think somebody on a 457.
So there's
Ninja 400s.
There's Ninja 400s,
Yeah.
and there is a Ninja 500. There is a Aprilia 457. Oh no, there was a guy on R3, but yeah, he was in the back. But yeah, I was pretty much the smallest guy. Yeah.
So why did you choose that bike to race in CVMA?
Well, because it was cheap, and I didn't buy it to race CVMA. I bought it to ride Streets of Willow. But we're not doing that
anymore. We're not
anymore.
going back there anymore.
So that's when I said, well, we're not doing it anymore. So let me go to Chuckwalla and take it to the Friday practice and see how I can do. And I noticed that I was actually pretty decent. I was fairly competitive. I'm like, I could probably do this. So then I just decided to race it, and then they made me take the new racer school again, because I hadn't had my license in like 9 years.
Yeah.
So they made me take it again, which was fine. But that's when the issues started. I knew the bike was slow, but I didn't realize how slow it was. It was way underpowered because something was wrong with it.
So being on such a smaller bike, what are you learning about riding, trying to race on that?
Corner speed.
Corner speed.
I've almost tucked the front so many times, and I've saved that front end on my knee so many times, and it's really teaching me where the limit of that tire is, and it's really fucking cool.
Yeah, because you got to carry so much more speed.
Yeah, you just got to be. Oh, one day it's just gonna let go.
Because I'm going to be racing on RS660 coming up at CRA on March 6th and 7th. So, and in the V4. There's a lot of people in that grid, though, for the Superbike and the Super Sports. That's why I don't know, the 660, there's a lot of people there, too. Those are probably the two most packed.
Really? I've never ridden a 660 on the track. I'd like to, but I think everybody should ride an ultra lightweight bike. Just start an ultra lightweight, because you'll ride an ultra lightweight and you'll jump on even 1,000 and it'll feel like nothing.
Yeah,
it'll feel like nothing.
So we have an R3. We have 2 R3s that we want to build out. So
build and go have fun. I don't think going to Apex does it justice, though. That's cool every once in a while, but you need to take it out on a bigger track and just wring its neck and carry speed. That'll teach you a lot. Because
we've ridden at Apex with some of the kids that go out there, and they're shredding that. They're extremely fast at Apex. And then we go out to streets. They're an A group, but they're not moving like they were at Apex, because it's just a bigger track. It's a different world going from that little kart track out to a normal sized track, even streets as tight as it is. So how are you managing? You're always at the track, right? You tune suspension at the track. How are you managing running a business and being out there racing at the same time? Are you not tuning while you're racing, or are you gonna be like,
I'm doing it all, man?
Like, hold on, I'm signed up for this race. I gotta go. I'll tune your bike when I get back. But they're like, I'm in this race too. I need it.
Well, luckily for me, I don't really tune a whole lot of ultra lightweights, mainly because it's just the bikes always turn, so people just don't know what a bike's supposed to feel like, especially on ultra lightweight, because they always work. Regardless if they're good or not, they always work. If you're on a bigger bike, it's more pronounced. Yeah. But on a little bike, it's not. So I really don't have a whole lot of ultra lightweights. I mean, I do have a few, but it was just like I set it up, they're out there running. That's it. But no, I do have riders that are in not super sport. Like 600 Super Sport, the 1000s, like amateur and experts. Like, they're out there, and I've been helping them out. But what's changed this year versus the previous years is I started riding people's bikes. And it wasn't something I ever really wanted to do, but that really helped
You like broadened your horizons of how a
Well,
feel
that
across
just
the
made
board.
everything easier.
Yeah.
Because I would go for a session, come back in, make a change, go out for one more session, dial it in, and all right, here you go. I mean, it's pretty dialed. And I mean, not all of them are that quick, but most of them are that quick. And from then, it was just a few little tweaks for them, and they were happy. So
Yeah.
then my work, it actually felt like it was slow because I wasn't doing as much because the bikes were pretty dialed for them.
Nice.
Yeah.
So if you give a new track day or basically a new track day rider, someone progressing from the street to the track, like the main piece of advice about suspension that they need to do before they get to the track, what is that?
Don't forget to service your suspension because it's got oil, it's got bushings, it's got piston bands, everything your engine has. It just doesn't get as much wear and tear, so they last a lot longer in between oil changes, but the oil does break down. And keeping oil fresh will keep your cartridges in better shape, and it'll keep the oil stable, especially on hotter track day conditions. Or if it's cold in the morning, versus like midday where it gets a little warmer,
Yeah.
you won't feel as much of a change. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
But don't be afraid to have a reputable suspension guy touch your suspension at least the first time, and then don't be afraid to make changes on your own. Just make sure you know how to put it back.
Yeah,
in
always,
case you
always
go the
write
wrong
it down.
way.
If you're making a change on your suspension, your clicker, know where it's set at so then you can go back to it in case you screw it up, right?
Yeah.
So, going off what you just said right now about servicing the suspension, that's not something you hear a lot of people talking about. Like, oh, I got to do an oil change, I got to do this. You don't really hear a lot of people talking about, like, yeah, I got to service my shocks.
It's getting more
for
and
no
more popular.
reason, though. They're like, oh, it's leaky, I got to service.
Yeah.
I got to get fork seals. Only because there was something wrong with it are you doing that now. A lot of people, I don't think, take the initiative to service their suspension. And your suspension is so important on a motorcycle, whether you're riding the street, commuting, on the track, racing, whatever. Your suspension is everything.
I think part of the problem is like service manuals don't really.
They don't give you a guideline.
They have like an interval for like maybe fork oil, but they don't say anything about the shock. And like when you look at motocross, like dirt riders, they're drilled to service your suspension every 30 to 50 hours. And people do that religiously. I mean, there's some people that don't, but they do it religiously because they're drilled to do it. So you do both. But in terms of street bikes, they're not being told to do that. One, because the service manual doesn't say it, but also the shops themselves, normal shops don't have the tools to service a shock.
Yeah.
They don't have the knowledge on how to service a shock. Anything from an Olin's, OEM, Penske, JRI, Bitubo, you name it. There's so many different brands. It took me a long time to invest the money in all the different specialty tools. So
I'm going to roll off that a little bit. Where can people find Bobby Loo and Motorrev Suspension and Tuning?
The easiest place to find me, if you're on social media, is Instagram, Motorrev_suspension tuning, or you can email me at motorrevusa@gmail.com.
Okay. Well, you know where to go get your suspension looked at, tuned, service, anything else you need regarding suspension. You want advice, you want them set up, you want them to let them test your bike, ride it, dial it in for you. Bobby Loo is the man. I can speak the truth right here. He's done several of our bikes, and every bike has come away just like a butter. It's done exactly what we wanted it to do. Red, the other co-owner of Speed Wobble, is in the booth right now giving us a giant thumbs up because he did one of her 660s, and it just responded to her. Two of her 660s, two of her three 660s. But now she's giving us a big heart from the background. Well, Bobby Loo, thank you very much. The knowledge you have imparted on viewers today, I think they can really come away with something, especially because the myth of suspensions, you've kind of given a lot of people insight into suspension, tuning it, setups, where to go, what to look for, and I think that's a valuable aspect when someone is learning to ride beyond basics. Motorcycling is a continuously learning sport, and it's always about progression. There is never you are at the top because we're friends with some of the people that have won Moto America Championships, and they're still striving to learn and do better. You know, they may be arrogant about it sometimes, but that's what they're still doing. So,
well, one thing I want to mention, I have a YouTube channel that it's been a challenge because I'm learning how to do editing with like DaVinci Resolve or my little editing software on my phone. I haven't do everything, so it's been kind of a slow process. But the idea is I'm gonna start. I have a YouTube channel, and I'm starting a series called Simplifying the Black Art of Suspension Tuning. And the idea is to just teach as much as I can about suspension. And bear with me, it's very difficult, one-man show here. But I'd start from the beginning and beyond, you know.
That's what people need, educate them.
Yeah, decipher all, you know, all the myths, all the common misconceptions, and just make it easy. And I'm trying not to complicate things with like special like suspension verbiage and stuff like that. I'm trying to make it as easy to understand as possible.
This thing right here, turn that one time, you know.
So, just look on YouTube for Motorrev Suspension Tuning.
All of Bobby Loo and Motorrev Suspension Tuning info will be in the description, and a link to his new YouTube series, Demystifying the Black Art of Suspension. Simplifying
the Black Art of Suspension.
Demystifying sounds better, bro. You should change it. I'm the marketing expert.
Okay.
No, but thank you very much, Bobby. It's been a pleasure.
Right, thanks for having me.
And we appreciate it. And everyone, stay tuned. Our next guest is going to be super awesome. We're super excited. I'm going to plug something real quick. Speed Wobble, our overseeing company, we are proud new sponsors to CRA, California Road Race Association, and we'll be sponsoring the 600 Super Sport Race with cash prizes. Plus, we're raffling off rider training sessions. We're going to take the cumulative last place people from every race and put them in a pool and raffle off a training session to one lucky person so we can help improve their riding and get them faster on the track and move them up the grid. So stay tuned. Head out to CRA March 6th and 7th. And until next time, everyone ride safe and ride beyond basics.